Good afternoon. This is Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep, and I am so excited to be here with so many of our good friends from Beat the GMAT for this webinar, What You Must Do Now, Admission to Top Business Schools. Before we go any further, I do have to apologize. I have a bit of a cold, so if you hear a cough here or there, please don't be disturbed. I will try to keep them to a minimum, but I am a bit under the weather, but I was so excited to give this presentation to all of you that I wanted to make sure that we got it done today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first, here's our agenda. And so we'll start with introductions. So for those of you who don't know me, I'll introduce myself, and we'll also introduce Stratus Prep and the Stratus Prep team and what we do. Then we'll break down the competition for business school. So you understand who are the, how they evaluate your applications, what are the different components that the AdComs look at, everything like that. Then we'll talk about what you need to be doing now for round one admissions. And you wouldn't believe it, but Columbia yesterday or Monday actually released their questions already. We thought we had almost another month before schools would start releasing their questions, but they've already started, so they're getting ahead of us, so we need to make sure that we're doing everything we need to do to be ready to hit those round one deadlines. Then I'll go through some case studies of people who worked with us in round one last year and where they ended up. I'll give you my key takeaways. And then finally, I have an exclusive partnership offer for all of our good friends here at Beat the GMAT. So that's our agenda. And I am very excited to work with you and to share everything that we can to help you have a great session today. Wonderful. So this is me. My name is Shawn O'Connor. As you know, I am the founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. I did both my MBA and my JD at Harvard. At HBS, I was a Baker Scholar, which is the top 5% of the class. I also graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown. I had a 780 on the GMAT. Now, you do not need to have a 780 to get into Harvard. We've had many people. We had someone last year with a 590 get into Harvard. We've had many people in the 600s get into Harvard, so don't think you need to have a 780 to get into Harvard. I have over a decade of admissions counseling experience. And before starting Stratus Prep, I worked with McKinsey and Lehman Brothers. I am the author of the Forbes column, The Launching Pad, and I also regularly contribute to all major business publications. And so here you can see my Forbes column called The Launching Pad, and you can go on there at your leisure and sort of check out what we have to say every week about MBA admissions. In terms of Stratus Prep, we do two things. We do GMAT Prep, and we also do MBA admissions counseling. So for GMAT Prep, we prep people all over the world. We use a live video conference. So you see and hear your tutor sees and hears you. All of our tutors have scored 770 or higher, which is the highest requirement in the industry. And all of our tutors also have at least 2 years of teaching experience, and they are full-time, and they've all graduated from top 5 MBA programs, including HBS. And so those are our tutor requirements. The way that we are super successful in sort of our approach to tutoring is that we have 5 of our own proprietary CAT exams. And so what we do is we give you the CAT exam, and we give you the CAT exams, and then we, from the CAT exams, we are able to figure out exactly what your weaknesses are. And so whereas, excuse me, in a class you spend a lot of time doing things that you already know and not enough time on the areas where you need help, we are able to get 80% of our students into the 700s, including people starting in the 400s and 500s, because we do the CAT exam, we look at the questions you take too long on or that you get incorrect, and then we take our entire curriculum and we customize it just to you, and we teach you the pieces that you need specific to you to get you to the very best score possible. So it's 100% focused on you, your needs, your weaknesses to make you most successful. The second thing that we do is we do MBA admissions counseling. And with MBA admissions counseling, we have a team of 4 people that work with you every step of the way. And they are there to help in any way they can to assist you. And so you'll have an MBA admissions counselor, and our MBA admissions counselors have all graduated from top 5 MBA programs. And then you'll also have me as a senior strategist, so I'll be there every step of the way to assist. And then you'll also have school specialists, many of whom are former AdComs from the schools. And then you'll also have professional editors. And so by having not only your own counselor who graduated from a top 5 school, but also having the rest of the team, having me with my 10 years of experience, having helped more than 4,000 students, and then also having the school experts who are former AdComs from the schools. That's all going to be very helpful to you. And then, of course, the professional editors who make sure that the style is perfect, the grammar is perfect, the narrative is engaging and compelling. What we do is by having 4 different people looking in on this process, all of whom have 2 or more years of successful experience coaching applicants, we make sure that whoever reads your application at the given school is going to be similar to either your counselor or to me or to the school-specific reader who knows the culture and values of that school inside and out, who knows the programs and the centers and the clubs and everything like that, the classes, or the reader might be similar to the professional proofreader. And because of that, that's why we have a 99% success rate. And we actually, if you apply to 4 or more schools, we give you our 4-school guarantee, which is if you apply to 4 or more schools, we are so confident that you will get into one of those schools, because over 99% of people do, that if you don't get into one of the schools, we will then work with you for free on the same number of schools in the next round or in the next year. So we're always going to be there for you to help you and support you all the way through this daunting process. So that's a little bit about what Stratus Prep does. Here are our success rates. This really shows the value add that Stratus Prep provides. So 80% of our students score over 700 on the GMAT. Our average score increase is 160 points, which is capped a little bit because we have many people who end up scoring in the high 700s, and they really don't have anywhere else to go. 99% of our students get into one of the schools of their choice, and we've helped our clients get over $20 million in unsolicited merit-based scholarships in the last 3 years. Now, if you look at our success rates school by school, in the column over on the left, you can see the tiny little blue columns. These are your chances of being admitted to these schools if you apply on your own. So like at Harvard, it's 12%. If you work with Stratus Prep, our lifetime success rate at Harvard is about 60%. At Stanford, it's about 7%, whereas our success rate is about 40%. At Wharton, it's about 10 to 15%. Our lifetime average is about 70%. So we're increasing your chances of admission to these schools by 5 to 6 times. So we can dramatically increase your chances of admission. So that's why folks work with us, and that's why we've become the international leader in this field over the last 10 years in the MBA admissions counseling. Last year, we worked with folks in more than 50 countries and about 40 U.S. states. And so we use video conferences, we use phone, we use email, all different means of communication to stay in touch with our clients and to help them reach their goals. All right, so now let's get into the meat of today's presentation. Now that you know a little bit about me, you know a little bit about Stratus Prep, and as I go through the meat of the presentation, if you have any questions whatsoever, please go ahead and type them into the questions box on your GoToWebinar toolbar, and I will answer those questions just as soon as I can. So who are you really competing against? Most people think they're competing against the entire pool of applicants. That is not the case. This isn't like college. You are competing against people who are most similar to you. You're competing against people from the same region. You're competing against people from the same industry. You're competing against the same people from the same function. So if you're a marketer doing consumer packaged goods in South America, you're competing against other Latin American marketers in consumer goods. Okay, you're not competing against investment bankers from New York or London or Hong Kong. You're just not. Okay, and so that's completely different. Also, men compete against men and women compete against women because the classes tend to be, they would love them to be 50-50. They're not 50-50 yet. And so what happens is the applications are about 80% male, 20% female, but the schools want their class to be 60-65% male and 30-35% female. So it is much easier to get in as a female. So females really compete against other females, males compete against other males, investment bankers compete against other investment bankers, Europeans compete against other Europeans. So what does this mean for you? What it means is to be successful, you need to distinguish yourself from those who are most similar to you. So you can't write an essay that's like, I'm an investment banker, and that means that I do this, and let me tell you how well I do this. Because as I always say, no matter how big a deal is that you did as an investment banker, chances are there's somebody who did a bigger deal. And so if you make it about how big a deal you did or something like that, then you're falling into the trap of, I'm competing against people similar to me. What I want to do is I want to use your personal characteristics, your nonprofit background, your other interests to really differentiate you from those who are most similar to you to make the school really want you. Now, what are the top business schools looking for? First, everybody focuses on the vital stats. And it is true, schools care about the GMAT. And we'll talk about different schools and who cares about what. But yes, they care about the GMAT. It's not the be-all and the end-all, but it is important. And they care about your work experience. And it's not so much how many years you have. So, for example, people say, oh, Stanford and Harvard want young people. We actually had somebody get into Stanford who had 15 years of work experience. She was in her late 30s and had 2 kids, okay? But we were able to show that that work experience would be very valuable to the incoming class. They care about leadership positions, both at work and in nonprofit or extracurricular activities after college. And then some schools, particularly Harvard and Stanford, care about your undergraduate GPA. So those are the vital stats. Then there's the unique personal story, and this is an area where people do not spend enough time. They want to know, who are you? What makes you who you are? What are your greatest accomplishments? What are your big setbacks or disappointments? How have you grown from these? What are your diverse perspectives? And then, why do you need an MBA? Okay, why business school? Why do you need an MBA? Why do you need it now? Why do you need it from this particular school? How are you going to contribute to this particular school? If you can't make those arguments about why you need an MBA from this school right now, you're not going to get in, because I can tell you every Stratus Prep student is going to make a really compelling argument for why they need an MBA from this particular school this year in order to change the world for the better, and also that they will make very important, unique, and valuable contributions to the class. If you don't make that argument, somebody else will, and that somebody else will get in. So don't hesitate to be personal. You want to talk about who you are. You want to talk about your accomplishments and how you've overcome failures. You want to talk about unique perspectives that you've had. So all of these are critically, critically important. So what do we need to do? We thought we had about 4 weeks until the applications are released. Columbia came out with theirs on Monday. Other schools will probably wait until mid to late May, so you probably do have 4 weeks for most schools. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we do, with our clients, we do 4 brainstorming exercises to get to know you personally, professionally, academically, and extracurricularly. And so we need to do those. We also, want to put together a strategy for you in terms of why an MBA, short-term goals, long-term goals, being very specific about those, why in particular each school, what are the key themes and key experiences, who should be your recommenders. Ideally, we like to get all of that done before the application questions are released, so that way when the application questions are released, we can focus just on essay outlining and customizing to the particular school. So there is a lot of work to be done before the applications come out, and they're already starting to come out. So now is really the time to get started. We are at about 85% capacity for round one, so we do cut off and not take any more students from round one once we're at capacity. Each of our counselors is full-time and takes about 5 students. So when we hit capacity, that's it, because we have to maintain our track record of success, and so we need to make sure that every counselor has the time to devote to their students. So we need to evaluate your academic performance. Now at Harvard and Stanford, as I mentioned, GPA is really important. GMAT, not so important. You need to be typically in the 600s. We did have that 590 who got into HBS, but we have a lot of people, 680, 690, who get into Harvard and Stanford, and it's not a problem at all. Okay, they are not heavy GMAT schools. Wharton, on the other hand, is the heaviest GMAT school. And they not only care about the overall GMAT, where they're looking for 700 and above, they also, particularly on the quant, want to see a 49 or higher, which is only 2 points off of perfect, which is extremely, extremely high. Okay? Other schools that care a lot about the GMAT and less about the GPA, MIT, Chicago Booth, okay? Haas, Duke. So you definitely want to know, if you have a lower GPA, then you want to target a high GMAT and then target the schools that focus on high GMATs. If you have a lower GMAT, then you want to stay away from the schools that focus on the GMAT and go more towards the Harvards, the Stanfords, the Kellogg's, schools that focus more on GPA and on other parts of the application. Okay. Perfect. All right. So next we want to talk about building a solid work history. And a solid work history doesn't mean 15 years, but it also doesn't mean 1 year. So it's not about how many years you've been there. It's about the impact that you've had. Okay? So you want to show impact, and that impact can be quantitative or that impact could be qualitative. And you want to show both of those in your resume. You don't want to focus on promotions because promotions are recognition of impact. You want to focus on the impact itself. So if you increased revenues by 20% or cut costs by 10%, whatever you did, those are the things you want to focus on. With entrepreneurship, you want to show that you are an innovator or an entrepreneur. Even if you work at a large company, it's important to show that you are what we call an intrapreneur, okay, an innovator from within, so that you think like an entrepreneur. Okay, I think I was disconnected from the audio for a moment there, but I am back. So what I was saying is, even if you're in a larger company, the schools have spent millions and millions of dollars on entrepreneurship and innovation centers, and they want everyone to be an entrepreneur or an innovator, even if they come from a larger company. So it's important that you show the impact that you've had. Let your recommenders talk about the promotions and the recognitions and the awards that you've received for your impact, and then also show that you are an entrepreneur and an innovator, somebody who has new ideas and who challenges people to come up with, who challenges someone to come up with new and different ideas and things like that. All right, great. It's also really important to have international experience beyond your home country, and this should be more than just study abroad. So many people studied abroad for a semester during high school or college. You need something more than that. Now, this could be work. Maybe you worked for a month or 6 months abroad. That would count. It could also be a service project of a week or two. And so if you don't have any international experience, that's another reason why we need to get started immediately, because we're going to need to get you that international experience right away so that we can get you into the school of your choice, because if you don't have any international exposure, it's going to be very difficult to get into the school of your choice. You also need to demonstrate after college a real commitment to nonprofit fundraising. It has to go beyond fundraising. You have to show that you're a leader. You have to show that you have strategic, high-level impact. The reason that the schools care about this is not because they care about you helping the poor, though that, of course, is a wonderful and important thing to do in your life. But they know that you don't have as much chance to be a leader, to be creative in your job because you're relatively junior. And so they look for these activities in order to make sure that you are, that you are a leader and that you demonstrate strategic thinking and you can motivate others and you can get things done through your community nonprofit activities. And so we're going to want you to be on a board or a junior board. And again, if you don't have this, we really need to get started now. We had people who got started in December or January. We're really, getting to the last minute here for round one. So we need to get started so that we can get you working away to improve. Then we need to demonstrate leadership, and you can demonstrate this at work. You can demonstrate this through nonprofits. There are other ways you can demonstrate leadership. You can demonstrate it through athletics. If you've been in the military, you can demonstrate leadership through the military. In college, you could demonstrate it through student government or other major large student organizations that you headed up. But we need to make sure to demonstrate leadership. These are all the things that even before the essay questions come out, we need to make sure that all these things are being done. And if we're missing any of these, we need to be adjusting for them immediately so that we can try to make you a more competitive applicant rather than just trying to cover up the weaknesses that you have. Then you need to determine clear short and long-term goals. So you need a clear, attainable, short and long-term goal that will contribute to society. So you have to have something that's unique. It's your short and long-term goal. It has to be unique, but it also has to be something where you're doing well. So it's something that's profitable and self-sustaining, but it's also doing good. It's also helping society as well. And then in your resume, you want to show that you deliver results. And as I said before, this is quantitative evidence like percent increase in revenue, percent increase in profit, percent decrease in costs, increase in number of members. But then this is also qualitative in terms of how you relate to different people and the different types of teams that you've led and the different members of the teams that you've had and what their backgrounds have been and how you can relate to and communicate with people from all different backgrounds, for example, how you've thought outside the box, interesting ideas that you've come up with that have been successful, et cetera, et cetera. Then we have to think about your recommendations. And you're going to need 2 recommendations for most schools. And we want to not just ask them to be recommenders, we want to cultivate strong relationships with them, which is why we want to start this now. And one of the best ways to cultivate strong relationships with them is to get them to believe that they were part of your decision-making process to go to business school. So even though you might know that 2 months from now you're going to ask them for a recommendation, asking them now, what do you think? I'm thinking about maybe applying to business school. What are your thoughts? And getting them to feel like they suggested it or they at least participated in the decision-making process will make them more committed to doing a great job. And we need recommenders who are going to be open to feedback, who are going to be open to, providing examples, because they need to provide examples of your leadership qualities, your communication skills, your analytical rigor, your strategic problem-solving skills, everything like that. So we need recommenders who will really do everything that needs to be done to make you as successful as possible. And hopefully that we can look over the recommendations and give some suggestions. And then you've got to have a clear reason that you have to be able to go to this particular school. And it has to go beyond just technical skills. It can't be like, oh, well, I want to learn how to make financial models. Like, you could learn to do that on Coursera. You could learn to do that on Khan Academy. It has to be deeper than that. And it can't just be like, oh, I want to network. Well, the schools don't want to be seen as just, creating networks. So you have to really go into what you want out of this experience. How do you want to grow as a person? How do you want to grow as a leader? How do you want to understand the intersection of different functional areas in business? And then why do you need to go to a top 3 or a top 5 or a top 10 school? Why is this particular school, why are there particular programs, and you want to name those programs specifically, why are those programs so important for you to be successful in attaining your goals and being able to reach your short and long-term goals and your dreams? All right, so let me take a couple of questions here, and then we'll go from there. So one of the questions that we had was, what would be a good GPA for Harvard on a 10 scale? I'm an international student. So Harvard, on a 4 scale, they're looking for a 3.7. So on a 10 scale, that would probably be about an 8.5 or better. But you can't really go exactly by that. You should look at, put your GPA into WES.org, World Education Services, and they can convert your GPA based on your particular university. Because some places it's a 10 scale, but nobody gets a 9 or a 10. Well, they understand that, so then it's really an 8 scale. But if it were a pure 10 scale where there are people who get 9s and 10s, then it would be about an 8.5. Okay. And a couple of other people had asked about how to convert your GPA from another country, and the best way to do that is to go to WES.org, World Education Services, and there's a tool on there where you can go ahead and put in your school, put in your GPA in the local system, and it gives you an approximation to as to what your GPA would be in the U.S. Okay, somebody asked, they had a 730, they've worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and they wanted to know if they should retake the GMAT. The answer is no, even in the most competitive demographics. And so, like, one of the most competitive demographics is, for example, the Indian demographic. Even there, you don't need to retake the GMAT if you have over 730. Even the very top schools from the most competitive demographics, like males in finance in New York City or Indian males from engineering backgrounds, the most that they're looking for is 730 to 750. So if you have above 730, as long as you did well on the quant, there is no reason to retake. Somebody asked about NYU Stern and UCLA and whether they are more GMAT focused or GPA focused. They are more GMAT focused rather than GPA focused, so that will be helpful. Somebody else had a 750 but did not do well on the IR. Should they retake? No. The IR, a lot of students who are applying don't even have the IR because the IR didn't exist a couple of years ago. And so I would not worry about retaking if you didn't do well on the IR. It's not a problem. Schools aren't really looking at the IR yet because not every student has it, because remember, they introduced the IR about 2 years ago, but the GMAT is good for 5 years. So like half the people applying now took the GMAT before the IR even existed. Do schools accept WES converted transcripts? So what schools do is they want the original transcripts. They then send it to WES, and WES does an even deeper analysis for them, and they pay for that. So you can get the WES analysis for yourself, but the schools will want the original transcripts, and then they will decide, you know, what to do, and you know, they will decide with WES how to scale it. But the estimate from WES is pretty close. How do I shortlist schools? I haven't taken the GMAT yet. So one of the things that's really important is to really look at what you want to do with your career. Do you want to be in entrepreneurship? Well, in that case, you should look at schools like MIT and Haas and Columbia and Stanford. Do you want to be in marketing? In that case, you want to look at schools like Wharton and Kellogg. Do you want to be in operations? In that case, you want to look at schools like Booth and MIT. Do you want to be in finance? In that case, you want to look at Harvard and Columbia and Wharton. So it really depends what you want to do with your career, and then you can come up with a list of schools, and then once you have your GMAT, you can decide what to do. All right, so let me go through the rest of the presentation, and then I'll take the remainder of questions. So it has become very, very frequent to use an admissions counselor. In fact, in a recent study of people who actually got into top 20 MBA programs, 20% publicly admitted that they used an admissions counselor, okay? Now, this number is higher because there's some people who won't want to admit to the school they just got into that they used an admissions counselor to get in. So the number is probably closer to like 65%. And I can tell you based on experience that in some cities, like New York City, London, Hong Kong, where it's very, very competitive, it can be as high as 80% of the students who get in are using professional help. So it used to be, do I get professional help or not? Now it's more like, okay, I'm going to get professional help, who do I get? And there are two things you should look for. If the firm isn't willing to give you school-by-school statistics, don't go with them. Because the reason we give school-by-school statistics is we want to show, look, we're not getting to our 99% success rate by only taking the best students or making everybody apply to safety schools. There are all these things you can do to sort of manipulate the overall statistics, but when it gets down to school-by-school, there's no manipulation. And then secondly, you should ask for a reference. And if a company cannot provide you a reference, there's a huge problem because they'll say, oh, it's privacy. Well, we don't give out anyone's information without asking them first, but enough of our students are very, very happy with the services that we've provided that they are more than happy to provide a reference. And so, you know, that's what we do, and we provide them a reference, and they're happy to speak about, you know, what we do and how we do it and how we were helpful to them. So here's some case studies from last year from round one. So we have Rob, who went to a top 25 undergraduate college, non-Ivy League. He had a 3.7 and a 700, so not a super high GMAT, but a pretty good GPA. He got into Stanford. We have Alex. He went to a small liberal arts college. He had a 670, so under 700. He had 4 years in finance, 2 years in investment banking, 2 years in venture capital. He got into both HBS and Columbia. We have Victor. He is a good friend of ours from India, and he went to an Indian university and had a 3.0, which is very low for Harvard, and a 670, which is also very low for Harvard, but he got into Harvard nonetheless. And the reason for this is he was a former consultant, but more importantly, he was an entrepreneur. And in fact, he wasn't a terribly successful entrepreneur, and when I got into Harvard, I actually was a failed entrepreneur. But even being a failed entrepreneur can be extremely valuable to a school like Harvard because, you know, basically if you are an entrepreneur who gets into one of these schools, you know, that can be really, really valuable in terms of all the entrepreneurial centers, entrepreneurial projects, entrepreneurial contests, everything like that. And then finally, Jennifer had a 2.7 and a 720. She was admitted with scholarship to Wharton, so it just goes to show that Wharton cares a lot about GMAT and not so much about GPA. She had worked in finance for 3 years. So here are my key takeaways. Recognize that it is still very difficult to get into a top MBA program. There is more and more international competition, which means there are less spots for everyone. Because there's just more pressure and more competition. Give yourself enough time. If you want to apply in round one, you need to get started now. You are really starting to fall behind. So be prepared. Each admission committee is looking to appeal to each individual admissions committee. Experts, our cost is maybe 1% or 2% of the cost of going to these schools, and you may end up going with the scholarships. You may end up going for free with our help. And we cost much less than a realtor on a percentage basis. You shouldn't spend $200,000 on an MBA without making sure that you have the professional advice so you get into the best MBA with the lowest possible cost. So here is our exclusive partnership offer. We are offering a special flash sale. So we are at 85% capacity for round one, and we are ready to just fill up and be done with round one. So we are offering 25% off between now and tomorrow at midnight, so April 30th at 11:59 Eastern Time. To get that 25% discount, you just sign up for the number of schools that you want, and then on the last page of the checkout, you put into the code BTG, all capitals, flash, capital F, 25, and that'll give you the flash sale 25% off. If you need a little bit more time, that's totally fine. We have a 15% offering for our friends at Beat the GMAT, and that is good until May 13th at 11:59, and you can use the code BTG15 for that. I am more than happy to do complimentary 30-minute consultations with you. So you can email consult@stratusprep.com, and I can do a consultation with you about your application strategy and next steps. I can't tell you what your essay should be on or who your recommender should be because I don't know you yet. But I can say in general what we should do in terms of next steps and everything like that. And references are always available, so we are always happy to provide references of people who have worked with us in the past. So again, to get the 25% off, you have to sign up by tomorrow evening at 11:59 Eastern using the code BTGFLASH with BTG and the F all capitalized, flash, and then 25. And if you want more time, you have until May 13th at 11:59, and you can get 15% savings with BTG all capitalized 15. And if you'd like your free consultation, send an email to consult@stratusprep.com. All right, so let me finish off the rest of the questions that we had here. How do you approach candidates that have a good idea of their long-term goal, even if cliche, but want to use business school as a tool to solidify that? For example, someone who is a generalist and not into a specific industry and wants business school to get deeper into a specific industry or to be able to bring expertise to a third world country. So what we do is we listen to your whole story. We figure out authentically where you are, where you want to be, and then we help put the specifics around that. And we've been doing this for a long time, so we help figure out, okay, what is a reasonable and believable short-term goal? What is a reasonable and believable long-term goal? And then how does the MBA fit into that? What experiences do you already have? What do you need, which is what we make the MBA be? And then where are you trying to go? And that is the short and long-term goals. All right. If you have a low GPA, 2.8, is it still possible to get into a top 10 program with a strong GMAT score? Yes, absolutely. I mean, we just saw Jennifer who got in with a 2.7 to Wharton and got a scholarship. It will be harder to get into Stanford and Harvard because they obviously do put a higher weight on GPA, but it is definitely still possible to get in, without a doubt. If you do well on the GMAT and we can tutor you to make sure that you get 750 plus and a great IR score and a great AWA score, you can definitely get in. Do schools consider that a lower GPA may come from a known, more challenging school like a Johns Hopkins engineering major? At the end of the day, the way the schools think about it is you chose your major, so they don't give you credit for choosing a harder major. That was your choice. Now, obviously, when it comes down to it, if you have a 3.5 and someone else has a 3.5 and you went to a harder school than they did, or a school that has grade deflation, or an Ivy League school, or an Ivy equivalent like Johns Hopkins, that will help you at the end of the day. But they don't give you credit for having a tougher major because at the end of the day, that was your choice. Is 3 years of work experience good enough to get into top colleges with a strong profile? Absolutely. Particularly American schools are looking to have less and less experience, so they're looking at people with even, with even 1 or 2 years of experience. So certainly 3 years of experience is more than enough. And remember that they count experience until you walk onto campus. So they will count experience from now through next year, because you won't go to campus until August of 2016. So if you have 3 years of experience now, you will show up in their statistics as 4 years of experience. If I'm a consultant but I'm interested in entrepreneurship and I've done a little entrepreneurship, will I be compared with consultants or entrepreneurs? If you're a consultant, you'll be compared with consultants, but it's good that you've done some entrepreneurship, because then we can say that you want to be an entrepreneur, and that's what they're really looking for. What about London Business School? Does it focus more on GPA or GMAT? They focus more on GMAT. They want to see something in the 700. If I haven't done any nonprofit kind of work till date, should I start doing this now? I'm targeting the September 2016 semester for my MBA. Yes, you need to start doing it now. You're not going to get in if you don't have experience in the nonprofit sector. So this is why we advise getting started with us right away, because this will allow us to get you onto a board, to get you the junior board type service that you need to be competitive for this round. If I don't have any international experience, but I am an international student, what impact does it have? Well, just because you're an international student, they still will look for some international experience. So have you done anything in other countries? Have you traveled to the U.S. or to other countries? Have you had any cross-cultural experiences, even if in your own country? So they're looking for not just international students, but they're looking for cross-cultural students, students who've been exposed to a variety of cultures, and that's very important. I had taken the GMAT 3 years ago with a 670. Is it too old to apply with? No, you can apply with that. The GMAT is good for 5 years, so you can apply. Now, certain schools, a 670 may be a little bit on the low side, but you certainly can still use that school. I have strong extracurriculars along with my college, but none with my work experience. How will this play on my application? You need to get extracurriculars with your work experience, okay? That's absolutely necessary. You need to have that, okay? So we need to work on that immediately. What schools are good to make a career in the public or government sector? Yale is particularly good at that. Stanford and Harvard are particularly good at that. But there are many schools that are good for making a career in the public sector or in government. Those are just a few. Could you talk about getting extra recommendations from school-specific alumni? This is something that people put way too much emphasis on. The schools don't care if you have recommendation from alumni. I don't understand why students don't understand the math here. Harvard Business School has about 70,000 alumni. If each of us was asked to write a recommendation once every 7 years, that would be 1,000 recommendations. 10,000 recommendations every year. Harvard only has 900 spots. So if they're getting 10,000 recommendations from alumni for 900 spots, they're not going to put a lot of weight on alumni recommendations. And I can tell you, as a Harvard grad, I've gotten way more than once every 7 years a request to send in an alumni-specific recommendation. So people make way too much of this. This is not your way into business school. You know, business schools have a lot of alumni, a lot of them write recommendations, and it's not an advantage that people think it is. When I applied to Harvard, one of my recommenders didn't have an MBA. The other one had an MBA from UCLA. The key thing is they both knew my work really, really well, and they were able to speak very specifically about my work experience, about my projects, my leadership style, my communication abilities, everything like that. All right. I am an international applicant aiming for an M7 MBA program, hopefully HSW. I managed to get a 720 on the GMAT, but got a 4 on the AWA. Does the score hurt my chances? No, not at all. That doesn't matter at all. Just write a good essay and nobody will care. The schools don't really care about the AWA at all. Which top schools have healthcare-focused MBA programs? So the top ones would be Wharton, Tuck, Columbia, and Haas. Those are the top, and Duke, healthcare-focused MBA programs. How do I make a switch from an engineering work experience to marketing or consulting? I have 2 years work ex as an engineer. Should I switch to a management role now? If you can get a management role, it's always great to have a management role. That's never going to hurt you. So it's good to get into a management role. But, you know, you can switch from engineering to, I wouldn't say on your application consulting because everybody says consulting, but you can switch from engineering to management through the MBA. You can use the MBA to be that conduit. All right. I have a low GPA of 3.1, a 730. I am a CFA. I work for an impact investing fund in Guatemala full-time. I'll have 2 years of experience doing that by fall of 2016. Any use applying to Harvard, Stanford with the low GPA? Yeah, I mean, I would apply. I think that even though your GPA is a little on the lower side, I think that you have a really compelling story. You're from a part of the world where they don't get as many applicants. You're doing impact investing, which is really new and innovative and interesting. You have a great GMAT score. You know, every once in a while, Harvard and Stanford do take lower GPAs, and you could be one of their cases. So you'll need to be perfect on the applications, but I definitely would think about that. All right. In India, people do not have much extracurricular activities compared to other countries. How important for an Indian are extracurriculars in getting into business school? Can a high GPA compensate for extracurriculars? No, I work with 500 Indian applicants. I've worked with 500 Indian applicants. We've gotten them all into extracurriculars. So nobody's going to accept that as an excuse that there are fewer extracurricular opportunities in India. There are many charities in India. You can be on the junior board. You can start the junior board of charities. A good GPA is going to be great, but that doesn't compensate. All of my Indian applicants, they all have good extracurricular experience, and so if you don't, you're not going to beat them out. You're not going to get into school. So you need to get your extracurricular activities in order. How good are the chances for an Indian student to get into HBS, Stanford, or Wharton, or another top business school? I mean, we had Indian students get into all of those schools last year, and we always have Indian students who get into those schools every year. It's just about having the best possible the best possible essays, the best possible resume, the best possible recommendations. But if you do that and you have, good scores and good grades, you definitely can get in. We have Indian students get into those schools every single year. Just a reminder of our promotion. We are having a 2-day Beat the GMAT flash sale. So for the next 2 days, today and tomorrow until 11:59 tomorrow at 11:59 in the evening, you can sign up with BTG Flash. The B, T, G, and F should all be capitalized, BTG Flash, and then the numbers 25. That will give you 25% off until tomorrow at 11:59. And then if you need a little more time, you can wait until up to May 13th at 11:59 Eastern in the evening, and then you can use BTG, all capitals, 15 to get 15% off. I would say if you want to do round one, sign up now. We've got to get started for round one. It is very late for round one now, especially with the schools already starting to release the questions. Last year, a lot of schools moved up the deadlines. That may happen again this year. If you want to sign up for a free consultation with me, email consult@stratusprep.com. And remember that we are always happy to provide references. You can check us out on the web or sign up online at stratusprep.com. You can email consult@Stratus Prep, or you can give a call at 212-307-1788. What advice do you have for reapplicants for these top programs, and do AdComs have a negative connotation towards reapplicants? No. I mean, reapplicants, it can be seen as a good thing because it can demonstrate that you really wanted to go to that school and that you were, really committed to going to that school, and so you didn't accept. They don't know this, but they're going to think that you didn't accept offers at other schools, because if not, you would be reapplicating to them, and if it's a top school, they're probably going to think, oh, he or she probably got into like the number 6 or 7 school, but really wanted to come to the number 2 school and really loves us, and that's why they're back. So there's no negative connotation. But what you need to do is show that you've reflected on your application, you've identified any areas of weakness, you've corrected for those areas of weakness, and you've made forward progress. So that's what's most important. For an Indian applicant, the cost is high as compared to what we earn. Do you have an Indian collaboration too? So the best we can do is the 25% off discount. We do have a lot of Indian clients. I know that it's a high cost, but the cost of our services are the same whether it's an Indian or not, because we use the same counselors, we give you the same high quality results, and we may save you many, many, many thousands of dollars if we get you a scholarship to one of these schools. So the 25% off is the best that we can do for anyone. Okay. I don't have any major volunteering experience for a nonprofit. Will this be a major hindrance? Will the schools look negatively if I start now? They won't look negatively if you start now. It's better to start now and have the experience than it is to not have the experience at all. Somebody asked if a recording of this will be available. I believe Beat the GMAT will post this to their YouTube page within a day or two, so there will be a recording available there. I have a low GPA around 2.8, but have higher grad GPA of 3.96. What are my chances to get into good schools? If you have a good GPA in grad school, and then you have a good GMAT, and then you have good essays and good recommendations, then I think it's very likely that you can get into a top school, because what we can do is we can isolate the undergraduate GPA as the one outlying factor, the one outlier. Is 5 years of experience or more detrimental? No. We had somebody with 15 years of experience getting into Stanford last year. We had somebody with about 10 years of experience getting into Harvard last year. It's all about how you demonstrate the experience. More than 5 years is definitely not a problem. Just starting my prep. Am I too late for fall of 2016? No. It says you have a 3.6, and you're from India and you studied with scholarship throughout. No, you're not too late, but we need to get working together on the GMAT and on the MBA admissions process right away, and you're going to need to do them simultaneously. You're not going to be able to do one and then the other. You're going to need to do the GMAT simultaneously. Confirm if you mean cross-cultural work experience or just cross-cultural experience. I did my undergrad and grad in the U.S., but I did so as an international student. I moved back to my country. Does that count? Yes, if you did your full undergrad and grad school in another country, that would count as international experience. It doesn't have to be only work experience. It just has to be international experience. What advice do you have for the MBA hopeful struggling with the GMAT? I'm struggling to break through the mid-600s, and I have solid work and extracurricular experience. I mean, I think that the best thing you can do is, I really believe in our tutoring program because it is completely customized to you. So what we'll do is we'll give you 5 CAT exams, and we'll customize the curriculum just to you. And that will, really, really set you apart, and that will really help you break through your current state, because it'll make sure that you really get where you want to go by dealing with each of the particular issues. Does Stratus Prep help find out what kind of MBA one should aim for? Yeah, we can definitely help you Should you focus more on an MBA focused on healthcare, entrepreneurship? Absolutely. I've traveled for work. I work for Dell. Does that count? Yes, as long as it's been more than a couple of days. As long as you can talk about working with people in different areas, that would definitely count as international experience. What schools are great for marketing? I mean, the marketing schools, the top schools for marketing would be Wharton and Kellogg. Those are definitely number 1 and number 2. But then there are other great schools that are a little lower in the rankings, like Boise, which is Emory, is really good at marketing as well. You know, NYU is very strong at marketing. UCLA is very strong at marketing. I'm looking for a career in strategy for media and entertainment. Which schools would be the best fit for this role? Definitely NYU and UCLA. If you want to do media and entertainment, UCLA and NYU are the best. Should my recommendations only be from work? Typically, people will have a current supervisor and a former supervisor. The only exception is if you've been very involved in a nonprofit, then you can use a nonprofit experience, somebody who works with you in the nonprofit. You should not use professors. They definitely do not want professors. Someone said, well, what if I have nonprofit experience but it hasn't been through an organized nonprofit? That's fine. Just put it down. Just explain what you've done. It doesn't have to be through an organized nonprofit. How do I make my profile more strong to attract scholarships? I mean, that's, you know, I would need to know a lot more about your background, but, you know, when we approach it, we not only try to get you into the school, but we also try to get you into the school with as much scholarship as possible. And so as we're crafting the essays and the recommendations and the resume and everything, we're aiming for both of those things. I took my GMAT 5 years ago and want to apply using the same GMAT, but I think it may be good to defer my enrollment and have more time before the MBA. Is it possible to do this? Probably not. If you took the GMAT 5 years ago, some schools require the GMAT to be valid on the day that you enroll. Other schools require that it be valid on the day that you apply. So if you already took it 5 years ago, it's not even going to be valid on the date that you apply. And for the schools where it has to be valid on the date that you enroll, that's going to be a huge problem, because if you're trying to defer, then you definitely won't be able to use that GMAT score. So I think you're going to struggle with that. Also, it's not automatic that you can get a deferral from business schools. Constantly interacting with international consultants and employees from other countries in my company counts as international experience. If that's the best you can do, yes, but that's not ideal. So we would rather see, you know, we would rather see you actually traveling and working with them and stuff like that. But, you know, cross-cultural work experience is good. It's not as good as actually working across cultures, but, you know, that could suffice. Are 3 years of work experience enough for Harvard and Stanford? Definitely more than enough. And then somebody asked for the best schools for entertainment and media, and I already mentioned NYU and UCLA. I have a 650 with a 4 GPA. I'm working in Asia's largest petrochemical industry. Can I apply to top 25 business schools? Yes, top 25, yes. Top 10, maybe not because of that GMAT score, but definitely top 25. All right. And we'll take one more question, and then we'll have to wrap up the webinar for today. If I was in the military and then worked as a consultant for 1 year, which category would I fall under? They really like military applicants, so they are going to prefer you as a military applicant. So they will put you in the military pool, which will be very much to your benefit. So finally, as a reminder, we have our 2-day flash sale. Stratus Prep is at 85% capacity for round 1. We are ready to just shut the doors on round 1. So we are offering 25% off through tomorrow, April 30th at 11:59 p.m. New York time. You can sign up online using the code BTG/25. So that's capital B, capital T, capital G, capital F, LASH, and then the numbers 25. If you need a little more time to make your decision, we offer 15% savings until May 13th. You can use capital B, capital T, capital G for that discount if signing up online. If you'd like to do a consultation with me, you can email consult@stratusprep.com. And remember that references are always available. Well, thank you all so much for joining this webinar. This is Shawn O'Connor, founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. I'm really glad that we had this time together, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye-bye.